ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhagavata Pravaha online course on the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the last 3 episodes, we have completed the first 10 chapters of the 7th canto, and in these 10 chapters, we have seen the pure devotional service offered by Prahlad Maharaj, and these 10 chapters describe the auspicious inclination of living entities. So the main subject matter of the 7th canto is Uti. Of the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, Atra Sargo Visargascha Sthanam Poshanam Uti Manvantara Ishanukatha Nirodha Mukti Ashraya. We have discussed these 10 topics earlier, and of these 10 topics, 7th canto predominantly focuses on this Uti topic. Uti means inclination, and inclination is of 2 types, auspicious and inauspicious. The auspicious inclination towards pure devotional service has been very elaborately described in the first 10 chapters through this beautiful example of Prahlad Maharaj. And in the last 5 chapters of this 7th canto, Varnashrama will be described. So in this Varnashrama, we find we may not find pure devotional service, but we find mixed devotional service, which is performed according to one's specific inclination to perform an activity. Depending on the qualities and activities of people, the people are divided into 4 classes. They are called 4 Varnas. So they are Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. So these are described in this 11th chapter, and from 12th chapter till the 15th chapter, the 4 ashramas are described. There are 4 ashramas and 4 Varnas. Together there is Varnashrama system in the Vedic culture. So these are very vividly described in these 5 chapters. We will see them step by step. So this entire story of Prahlad Maharaj was narrated by Narada Muni to Yudhishthir Maharaj. So after hearing the pure devotional service of Prahlad, Yudhishthir Maharaj was so enlivened and so inspired, and he made his further enquiries in front of Narada Muni. So he asked, Yudhishthir Maharaj asked Narada Muni, Narada Muni, I want to know about Sanatana Dharma, or eternal religious system of human beings. Sanatana Dharma. What is the eternal duty of all living beings? Which is Bhakti Yoga. He wanted an elaboration on Bhakti Yoga. And secondly, the second question asked by Yudhishthir Maharaj was, what is Varnashrama Dharma, or the social and spiritual duties of human beings? So he asked 2 questions, one about Sanatana Dharma, second is Varnashrama Dharma. So Yudhishthir Maharaj glorified Narada Muni and then asked these questions, and Narada Muni began to answer the first question, which is Sanatana Dharma, which is Bhakti Yoga. The topmost occupational duty of the entire humanity is Bhakti Yoga, as we discussed right in the beginning of Bhagavatam. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktiradhokshaje ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. Means the supreme duty of entire humanity is to perform pure, loving, devotional service unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, and that bhakti has to be performed without any motivations and without any interruptions. That is the highest occupational duty, and that is the Sanatana Dharma of the entire humanity. And Narada Muni elaborates on this. He says in the 6th shloka, he says that I offer my obeisances unto Lord Krishna, Lord Narayana, and that Lord Narayana appeared along with Nara in this world through Murti and Dharma. And even he is also executing austerities at Badrikashram now. And he says that Dharma Moolam hi Bhagavan Sarva Vedamayo Harihi Smritam cha tadvidam Rajan Yena Chatma Prasidati. Dharma Moolam hi Bhagavan means the Moola, or the root or the cause of all dharmas is Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord. And Sarva Vedamayo Harihi, that Lord Hari is the personification of all Vedas, is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. As Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa Sarvair Ahameva Vedyo Vedanta Krit Veda Videva Chaham. I am the compiler of Vedanta. I am the knower of Vedanta. By studying all the Vedas, I am to be known. Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita. So here also it is said, Sarva Vedamayo Harihi. And on the basis of this religious principle, everything is satisfied, my dear king. So in this way, Narada Muni said that the dharma, Sanatana Dharma, has actually been enacted and inaugurated by the Supreme Lord, Vishnu or Krishna or Narayana. So then he says that this, as a part of Sanatana Dharma, human beings are expected to cultivate 30 qualities to satisfy the Supreme Lord. So any dharma that we perform should ultimately enable us to please the Supreme Lord. We perform anything to please the Lord. So that's our ultimate focus. So Satyam, what are the 30 qualifications that please the Lord? So Narada Muni describes them in shlokas number 8 to 12 in this chapter. He says, Satyam daya tapah shaucham titiksha iksha shamodamaha titiksheksha shamodamaha ahimsa brahmacharyam cha tyagah swadhyaya arjavam. So Narada Muni says, Satyam, truthfulness, quality number 1. Number 2, daya, mercy. Number 3, tapaha, austerity. 4, shaucham, cleanliness. Then titiksha, tolerance. Iksha, discrimination. Then shama and dama, mind control and sense control. These are 8 qualities. The 9th quality, ahimsa, non-violence. 10th quality, brahmacharyam, celibacy, to abstain from sex life. And tyagaha, or charity. And swadhyaya means reading of scriptures. Arjavam means simplicity. 13 qualities are covered. 14th quality, satisfaction. 15, serving authorized saints. 16, gradually giving up all unnecessary engagements. Then 17, observing the futility of unnecessary activities in this world. Then 18th, silence or gravity. 19th quality, researching one's own soul and trying to understand the quality of one's own spiritual nature of oneself. 20th quality, distributing food to people. 21, seeing that every soul is a fragmental part of the Supreme Lord and spiritual in nature. 22nd quality. So 22nd quality till the end, till the 29th quality actually are the core qualities of devotional service. So the shloka says, Shravanam kirtanam chasya smaranam mahatam gatehe sevejyanter dasyam sakhyam atma samarpanam. It says Shravanam, hearing about the Lord. Kirtanam, chanting about the Lord's glories. Then Smaranam, remembering the Supreme Lord. Then finally, 25th quality, service. 26, worship. 27, offering obeisances. And 28, becoming a servant of the Lord. 29, becoming a friend of the Lord. 30th, surrendering oneself to the Lord. So this sloka is similar to what Prahalad said to Hiranyakashipu in the 5th chapter. He says, Shravanam kirtanam Vishnoha smaranam pada sevanam archanam vandanam dasyam sakhyam atmanivedanam. These are the 9 processes of devotional service. These are the foremost limbs of devotional service, while all the other previous limbs that we have discussed, satisfaction, tolerance, and charity, reading scriptures, they are like secondary or auxiliary qualities that assist the performance of devotional service. So one should perfect or practice any of these 9 processes of devotional service, hearing about the Lord, speaking about the Lord, or remembering the Lord, and worshipping the Lord, offering prayers to the Lord. These are all various core practices of devotional service. One should focus on them. So these 30 qualifications would actually constitute the essence of human life. So this is a part of our Sanatana Dharma. These are the eternal activities of a human being. So in this way, Narada Muni very eloquently described the Sanatana Dharma and answered the first question of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And what was the second question asked by Yudhishthira Maharaj? The second question was about Varnashrama Dharma. And starting from the 13th shloka of this chapter, 7.11, till the end of 7th canto, Narada Muni describes Varnashrama Dharma and answers the second question of Yudhishthira Maharaj. First, in this chapter, 11th chapter, he describes the 4 Varnas, and in the remaining 4 chapters, 7.12, 13, 14 and 15, he describes ashramas. First we will focus on Varnas. So there are 4 Varnas: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. Brahmanas are also called Dvijas or Vipras. So Brahmana is the intellectual class in the human society. Then Kshatriyas are the administrative class. And Vaishyas are the mercantile class. And Shudras are the working class. So any society, any human society, civilized society is divided into these 4 categories. And these 4 categories are not there to just establish an artificial superiority or inferiority amongst the people in this world. These 4 classes are the natural division of any civilized society. In any society, whether you call people as Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, in any society, there are a class of people who are intelligent, and there are a class of people who do administration, and there are a class of people who do business, and there is a class of people who work, who may not have so much of intelligence and resources, they just work under other 3 classes. So it's very natural in any human society. And Krishna has personally created this system. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. He says that I have created these 4 Varnas and I have divided the people in the society based on these 4 Varnas according to their qualities and activities, not by their birth. A person who is born as a Brahmana is supposed to have Brahmanical qualities. And if he does not have Brahmanical qualities, and if he has qualities of Kshatriya, such a person is accepted as Kshatriya in the Vedic society and not as a Brahmana. So it's all about qualities and activities and not birth. By birth one cannot become a Brahmana or Kshatriya or Vaishya or Shudra. So now Brahmanas undergo different samskaras, purificatory ceremonies or reformatory ceremonies. So by chanting so many mantras, people reform their birth. And these reformation or purificatory processes are available for Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas also. According to their family traditions, there may be variations in the samskaras, but upper classes of society follow these reformatory processes. So Brahmanas have 6 occupational duties, 6 qualities. So one is worshipping Krishna. Number 2, teaching others how to worship Krishna. Number 3, studying the Vedas. Number 4, telling others how to study Vedas or teaching Vedas to others. Number 5, accepting charity. Number 6, giving charity. These are the 6 qualities of Brahmanas, 6 duties of Brahmanas, not qualities. So they perform these activities. And what do Kshatriyas do? Kshatriyas do not accept any charity. They are administrators. So they perform the other 5 duties of Brahmanas, but they cannot accept charity. They can give charity, but they cannot accept charity. And a Kshatriya is not allowed to take taxes from Brahmanas. Brahmanas are intellectual class of people who provide education to all the sections of society. They are teachers of the society. But Kshatriya is not supposed to extract money from these teachers of the society, but he can take taxes from other classes of people in the society. And he can accept taxes because he is ruling, he is a king, but he cannot utilize the taxes for his own sense gratification. A Kshatriya is meant to utilize all the taxes for the welfare of the society. And Vaishyas are the businessmen. They are mercantile community. So they should follow the directions of Brahmanas and they should do agriculture, cow protection and business, trade. Then Shudras accept one of the upper 3 classes as their master and they should render service to them. And nobody is stamped as a Shudra by birthright. Although a person is born as a Shudra, but if he exhibits the qualities like a Kshatriya or a Brahmana, he can be accepted as Brahmana. As I said, it's not according to birth, it's according to qualities and activities. So, and these are the duties of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, and there are 4 alternative duties for Brahmanas, apart from the 6 duties that we just mentioned. So they are, a Brahmana can also sometimes do agriculture or cow production or trade if needed. And a Brahmana may depend on others by receiving charity, or he may not even receive charity, he may just maintain himself on his own. And Brahmana may beg in a paddy field for some grains, or he can collect the paddy or grains that are left in a field and then survive based on those grains. So these are alternative duties for Brahmanas. And there are some emergency duties. So a person has a prescribed duty according to Vedic culture, depending on what is his Varna. But in emergency, sometimes people of one Varna can perform the duties of other Varna. It's emergency. That is like Apad Dharma. So in emergency, one may accept like food which is rejected. They can collect grains from a field, or they can beg some grains, they can till the land, they can do some trade. So in emergency that can be done, but not in an ordinary cases. So like that Narada Muni describes the emergency duties and the regular duties, Samanya Dharma and Apad Dharma, for all the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and Vaishyas and Sudras. And after describing the duties, he describes the symptoms or qualities or characteristics of these 4 Varnas. First he says about the Brahmanas. He says, Shamodamastapashaucham santoshaha kshantirarjavam gnanam dayachyutatmatvam satyam cha brahmalakshanam. So these are the qualities of Brahmanas. What are they? Shama, mind control. Dama, sense control. Tapaha, austerity. Saucha, cleanliness. Santoshaha, satisfaction. Kshanti, forgiveness. Arjavam, simplicity. Then Gnanam, knowledge. Daya, mercy. Then Achyutatmatvam means complete dedication to Lord Achyuta or Krishna. And Satyam, truthfulness. These are the qualities of Brahmanas. A person who has these qualities is accepted as a Brahmana in Vedic society, although he is not born as a Brahmana. Even if a Kshatriya accepts these qualities, has these qualities, exhibits these qualities, he can be accepted as Brahmana. We have seen in the 5th canto that Lord Rishabhadeva had 100 sons. So Rishabhadeva was a Kshatriya. His 100 sons can become Kshatriyas, but all of them are not Kshatriyas. Only 10 of them are Kshatriyas. 81 of them became perfectly qualified Brahmanas. So it's about birthright. It's not about birthright, it is about the qualities one has and the activities one does. And what are the symptoms of a Kshatriya? 22nd shloka says, Shauryam Viryam Dhritishtejaha Tyagaschatma Atmajayah Kshama Brahmanyata Prasadascha Satyam cha Kshatrala Lakshanam. Narada Muni says, Shauryam, bravery in battle. Viryam, being very powerful and unconquerable. Then Dhriti, Dhriti means patience. And Tejaha, challenging spirit. So a Kshatriya would challenge an enemy and he would fight in the war without showing his back. A Kshatriya may even die in a war, but he does not show his back and then run away from battlefield. So these are the qualities of Kshatriya. There are other symptoms also. And Vaishyas, they have devotion to different demigods, and they endeavor for advancement in dharma, artha, kamas, and they also believe in the words of scriptures and gurus. So these are the symptoms of a Vaishya. And the symptoms of Shudra are, they are clean and they are obedient to the upper 3 classes, and they render service to master without any duplicity, without any qualities of stealing or cheating. So they are very truthful. So these are they protect the cows of Brahmanas. So these are the qualities of Shudras. So these are different characteristics of different Varnas, 4 Varnas, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras. We have seen their characteristics and we also have seen their duties. And later Narada Muni describes the duties of a chaste wife. A chaste wife in the Vedic culture renders service to husband with love and affection, and she is very favorably disposed to her husband, and she follows the vows of husband, and she speaks very sweet words, and she is not very greedy. She has sense control, and she is expert in doing all the households and takes full responsibility of maintaining the house in a very wonderful manner. So these are the qualities of a chaste wife according to Bhagavatam. And there are some mixed castes. We have seen the castes of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. There are mixed castes. For example, a boy from a caste marries a girl from another caste, that is called mixed castes. So sometimes some mixtures are bona fide and they are nice, and some mixtures are not very proper mixtures. For example, when a woman of a high caste marries a man of lower caste, that is called pratiloma marriage. When a man of higher caste marries a woman of lower caste, it is called anuloma marriage, which is considered better. For example, Kardama Muni, who was a Brahmana, married Devahuti, who was a Kshatriya girl. And Yayati, who was a Kshatriya, married a Brahmana girl named Devayani. In the 9th canto, these stories come. So these are examples of anuloma and pratiloma marriages. So these are called mixed castes. So they are also described, and the varnas are based on qualities and not birth. Narada Muni also says that in the 35th shloka. He says, Yasya yallakshanam proktam pumso varnabhivanjakam tadantaryapi drishyeta tatte naiva vinirdrishet. So this shloka is often quoted by Prabhupada in many of his purports, that the shloka says that a person's varna is decided according to his qualities and not by birth. That is the essence of the shloka. So we completed the 11th chapter and we come to the 12th chapter. The 11th chapter described Sanatana Dharma and Varna Dharma, and Ashrama Dharma is not yet covered. Ashrama Dharma is described in the 12th chapter, and the rest of this canto, 12, 13, 14, 15 chapters describe ashramas, 4 ashramas. The 12th chapter specifically describes the duties of a brahmachari and vanaprastha. There are 4 ashramas. So 4 varnas are 4 classes of the society. 4 ashramas are the phases of one person's life. So the first 25 years is generally considered brahmachari period. It's like a training period. So it is brahmachari ashrama. And then after completing the duties of a brahmachari, one can enter grahastha life if one makes that choice. And after living in household life for about 25 more years, so at the age of 50, somewhere around the age of 50, one can enter vanaprastha life, which is called retired life. Brahmachari life is student life, grahastha life is household life, and vanaprastha life is retired life, and sannyasa is a life of full renunciation. That's at the end of one's life. Sometimes a brahmachari can directly become a sannyasi. He may not choose to follow the grahastha life and vanaprastha life. Or somebody may just enter grahastha and then vanaprastha ashrams and then finally come to sannyasa also in the Vedic life. So in this chapter, 12th chapter, the duties of a brahmachari and a vanaprastha are described. First we will describe the duties of a brahmachari. So Narada Muni says, Brahmachari gurukule vasandanto gurorhitam acharandasa vannicho gurau sauhrdaha. Brahmachari gurukule vasan, a brahmachari or a celibate student who has no association with the opposite gender. Such a brahmachari lives in Gurukul, in the school of a teacher, a guru. And vasan danto guror hitam. Danto means he is completely self-controlled and he works only for the satisfaction of guru, guror hitam. And acharan dasavan nicho, like a lowly servant, he renders various services to guru and receives knowledge, and he is very friendly towards guru. And he should worship guru, he should worship fire, sun and the Supreme Lord Vishnu, of course, and he should render various services to guru. Being called by guru, he should simply study the Vedic mantras and he should learn all the Vedic hymns from a bona fide spiritual master, and he should dress himself in simple garments and collect charity by going to different houses in the morning and eat only what the Guru gives him, and only whatever is offered by Guru he should eat. And specifically a brahmachari restrains association of opposite gender. In the 6th shloka, brahmachari's dealings with women are described, 6 to 10 slokas. So brahmachari is very well behaved and very controlled in his eating habits and very faithful to the instructions of Guru and Shastra and sadhus, is sense controlled, and he interacts with women or men who are associating with women only for very necessary purposes. There is no unnecessary interaction with opposite gender. So a brahmachari just restrains himself from interaction with women only to very necessary activities. And a brahmachari may not even interact so much with the Guru's wife also. Guru need not be a sannyasi all the time. A grihastha or a householder along with his wife also can train a brahmachari student. So thus there is some interaction between the brahmachari student and Guru's wife. But brahmachari is supposed to serve that Guru's wife as a mother, see that Guru's wife as a mother, and one should not unnecessarily interact a lot if the Guru's wife is very young. And so brahmachari restrains his interactions with women as much as possible and keeps them necessary within limits, within restrictions. And because this undue attraction or interaction with the opposite gender becomes a very great stumbling block in one's spiritual activities. So one can become frivolous, and one can become, one's senses could become uncontrolled in the association of opposite gender. That is the nature of material senses and this material world. That's why one has to be extremely careful, as taught by Bhagavatam. And further details of brahmacharya ashram are given. So there are certain forbidden items. So one should not apply any ointments or cosmetics on one's body. One should not massage one's body with costly oils or other things. One should not eat meat. One should not drink wine. These are very strict rules and regulations to be followed by all brahmacharis. And one should study scriptures very diligently. It's a compulsory aspect of brahmachari life to study scriptures. One cannot avoid scriptural study. To the best of one's ability, one should study the scriptures and try to imbibe, internalize, realize, practice, and implement all the teachings of the scriptures in one's life under the direction of bona fide Guru. So, and one should ultimately realize the omnipresence of the Lord. He is the supreme, one should worship the Supreme Lord. So these are the duties of a brahmachari. And next, Narada Muni describes the duties of a vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means brahmachari is a student. That is the first phase of one's life. Vanaprastha is the third phase of one's life. That is retired life. So after leading household life, now brahmachari, after his brahmachari training, he can continue to remain in the Guru's ashram as a brahmachari whole life and accept renounced order, or he can take the permission of Guru and offer some dakshina to Guru and quit that brahmachari life and marry and enter household life. After living in household life for a while, for some years and generating progeny and all, one can take to vanaprastha order and retire from active household life. So what are the duties of a vanaprastha? Narada Muni describes now. The general duties of vanaprastha are, he should not eat grains grown by tilling the fields. Means he should not personally get into any agriculture work. He cannot grow his grains. He can just accept charity, he can do other things. And he should not eat unripe grains, and one should offer in sacrifice fruits and grains, and one should practice, one should make a very simple and humble thatched cottage and stay in a cave, and one should wear matted logs, one should clean the body of any dirt, one should not cleanse one's body. So they are totally oblivious to bodily maintenance in one sense. So they should remain in forest for 12 years and 8 years and 4 years like that. So basically these are very strict Vedic traditions which may or may not be affordable for Kali Yuga people to follow. So we need to follow the acharyas who give us instructions according to time, place and circumstances. In Kali Yuga, it may not always be practical to just leave household life and enter a forest and make a cottage or may live in a cave. It may not be always possible in Kali Yuga, and as Kali Yuga progresses, it becomes totally impractical and it's impossible. So these are the regular duties of Vanaprastha, but we need to follow the acharyas' prescriptions, because they translate the spirit of the scriptural statements in practical terms. The scriptures are highlighting certain spirit, and acharyas just translate them into practical terms and then apply them according to time, place and circumstances. For example, Narada Muni told Dhruva Maharaj, because Dhruva Maharaj was about to perform austerities in a forest. There Dhruva Maharaj may not get all kinds of ingredients for his worship. So Narada Muni told, you can just make a form of the Lord with mud, because he may not get a golden deity or a bronze deity or silver deity or a brass deity, but he can make a deity with form with best features possible and worship that form. So one has to apply teachings of the scriptures according to time, place and circumstances, according to the guidance of acharyas, guidance of experienced devotees. For example, it is said that it is best to offer the water of holy rivers to the Lord, like Ganges water and Yamuna water. But if Ganges water is not available, Yamuna water is not available in another country, that does not mean that we stop offering water to the Lord. So we take any pure water, clean water, and we can chant mantras and invoke the presence of holy rivers in that water by chanting mantras in a pure heart. Gange Yamune Cheva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jalesman Sanidhim Guru. So we invoke the presence of holy rivers. So we need to apply the rules and regulations of the scriptures according to time, place and circumstances under the guidance of experienced devotees and acharyas. So a Vanaprastha in the Vedic culture, he would just give up his body in the forest by merging the gross elements of his body into the subtle elements and eventually giving up that gross and subtle material bodies and attaining liberation. So this is the ideal way of giving up body for a Vanaprastha. So that completes the 12th chapter, and we enter the 13th chapter. The 13th chapter is entitled The Behavior of a Perfect Person. In the 12th chapter, Narada Muni described the duties of a brahmachari and Vanaprastha. Now, in this chapter, he describes the duties of a renounced person or a sannyasi. So Narada Muni says, what are the qualities or conduct of a sannyasi? He says, Narada Muni says, a sannyasi is very detached. He merely keeps his body maintainable. He is not dependent on anything external or material. He travels on the earth and he passes one night in one village and then he goes to another place and he spends other time, remaining time there, and then he passes to another place. So like that he travels. He does not have a permanent residence at one place. So he should wander alone. He does not have any associates. And he should just live by begging charity from different people. And is not dependent on one particular person or particular place. So he should not be accepting charity from one person only permanently. He should just go from one place to another place, and then who gives him charity for his next meal, a sannyasi does not know. So that's how he's totally dependent on God, dependent on the circumstances. And his consciousness, these are the duties of a sannyasi. That is how a sannyasi conducts himself. And what is the consciousness of a sannyasi? In his consciousness, he is completely dedicated to the Supreme Lord. And he sees everything resting on the Supreme Lord. And he understands the self, and he realizes the self. And he is completely freed from all bondage and any material attachment. And later, other qualities of sannyasis are described. So sannyasi should teach Vedic literatures to people. And spiritual literatures are supposed to be studied. Literature without any spiritual benefit should be rejected. And one should not become a professional teacher and indulge in teaching any subject matter which is on a material plane. A sannyasi is specifically meant to teach spiritual subject matters. And sannyasi should accept disciples, but he should not accept so many disciples just to increase his name, fame and prestige. And he should not get allured by the opulence of some of his disciples. A sannyasi may accept a very wealthy grihastha as a disciple, but a sannyasi should not accept all the wealth of that, he should not get attracted to the wealth of that wealthy disciple. And he should not attempt to build so many temples to increase material opulence, but building temples to worship the Supreme Lord with a pure consciousness is bona fide, but one should not build temples just to increase one's false prestige. So like that there are so many rules and regulations for a sannyasi, and later Narada Muni describes some more aspects of sannyasa life through a conversation that happened between Prahlad Maharaj and an Avadhut Brahmana. Once Prahlad Maharaj, once he is grown up, we have seen the history of Prahlad Maharaj as when he was a small 5-year-old child. But when Prahlad was coronated as the king, so he grew up, and then he once goes to hunting in the forest, and there he has seen an Avadhuta Brahmana. Avadhuta means he is not obliged to follow any rules and regulations or social customs. He can just conduct himself on his own. It's a very exalted stage where one transcends any rules and regulations and then conducts himself completely based on his own desires, which are very pure, and he is completely dedicated to the Lord also. Like that, there is one Avadhuta Brahmana whom Prahlad Maharaj has seen in the forest. So Prahlad went to that person. This Avadhuta Brahmana is very stout and strong, very healthy, but he doesn't seem to be working at all. He is just sitting there idly. So Prahlad went to that saintly person and asked, "My dear saint, Avadhut Brahmana, you don't seem to work to earn your livelihood. How are you maintaining your body? I have this doubt. Can you please clarify this doubt? You seem to be very stout and strong and healthy and fat. So how did your body become so fat?" Then this Avadhut Brahmana said that, "I have spiritual vision." "Oh, my dear Prahlada, you are the king of demons, I know this. So you are respected by advanced men. You are aware of different stages of life, and your inner spiritual vision is awakened. You can see any man's character and the results of his actions. You can understand my glory." Because many people saw this Avadhut Brahman, but nobody approached this Avadhut Brahman with relevant enquiries and with a desire to seek some spiritual knowledge. Only Prahlad approached him. So Avadhut Brahmana glorified Prahlad for his pure devotion, and he said that, "Oh Prahlad, you know everything, but still you are asking me, so I will answer your questions." He says that, "Oh my dear Prahlad, I have completely realized and understood the futility of material happiness. Happiness that is derived from material senses and on a material plane in this material world is totally insubstantial, although people hanker for it a lot. So material desires cause transmigration from one body to another body, and human life is like a junction from where one can be elevated to the spiritual realm or one can be degraded to animal species. So one has to utilize one's human life in a very judicious manner and utilize one's time in this human form of life for spiritual perfection." And he says, "I have abandoned all material activities. I just become absorbed in spiritual consciousness only." And forgetfulness of this fact will lead to miseries. So it's a very futile attempt to search for material happiness in this world. So all the so-called enjoyable objects in this world are totally futile, and even a great wealthy person or a rich man is constantly insecure. Don't think that a rich man is very happy and he has all pleasures on the planet. A rich man is always insecure and fearful that somebody might come and steal my property, or the government may take all my property in the form of taxes, or my family members or other distant relatives may come and then encroach upon my property. So like that, a rich man is also in anxiety in this material world. An intelligent person should give up the desire for prestige and money, which is cause of lamentation, illusion, fear, attachment, poverty, and unnecessary labor. In the 34th sloka, this Avadhut Brahman says that Shoka Moha Bhaya Krodha Raga Klaibya Shramadayah. Shoka is lamentation, Moha is illusion, Krodha is anger, Bhaya is fear, then Raga attachment. So all these negative qualities should be given up by an intelligent person. And this Brahmana, Avadhut Brahmana, says that I have two gurus. I have accepted two gurus. Number one is a bee and a python. These are the two excellent gurus. Okay. So the bee teaches us detachment and the python teaches us satisfaction. Why the bee teaches us detachment from material desires? Because the bee accumulates a lot of honey. The bee goes from one flower to another flower and picks some honey and then stores that honey in beehive. So like that the bee stores a lot of honey, but some thief will come and steal all this honey, and the bee's hard-earned honey is completely gone. The thief steals all this honey. So we need to understand that we cannot maintain any attachment towards any object that we ourselves have procured. So whatever is needed for us, we can earn it by honest means and then use it for our livelihood and then be detached. So whatever we may accumulate will not remain with us. It can be taken by somebody, or at the time of death we have to give it up forcefully. So we can learn detachment from this honeybee, and we can learn satisfaction from this python. Python means it's a huge serpent, huge snake. It stays at one place, and whatever comes of its own accord, python just swallows and then maintains itself. Python does not move out to work and to search for his food. So python is satisfied with whatever comes of its own accord. So like that we need to develop the satisfaction. So then this Avadhut Brahman describes his eating habits, dressing habits and sleeping habits. He says that I eat whatever is available, whether it is small quantity or big quantity, whatever comes of its own accord I eat. Dressing habits. I just dress myself with whatever is available. Sometimes I may wear silk cloth, sometimes I may wear tree bark. Whatever is available I just use. And sleeping habits. I lie down wherever possible. I may sleep on ground, I may sleep on glass, I may sleep on stone. I can sleep anywhere. I can sleep on a pile of ashes also. So like that this Avadhut Brahman describes all his different habits. So these are the qualities of a sannyasi or a renounced person who is totally dependent on Lord and who does not over endeavor for his sense enjoyment, and he just accepts whatever comes of its own accord for his own bodily maintenance. Only to that degree he accepts something, otherwise he is so absorbed in spiritual consciousness. And one more thing is, he does not criticize people who has different mentalities, and the only desire that the sannyasi has is desire for welfare of other people. He is a genuine well-wisher of common people, and he tries to connect common people with the super soul, with the Supreme Lord. These are the qualities of sannyasis. So Narada Muni described the qualities of a brahmachari, a vanaprastha and a sannyasi in 2 chapters, 7.12 and 13. In 7.14, the 14th chapter, Narada Muni describes ideal family life or the qualities of a grihastha. It's a little more elaborate because grihastha has so many duties to perform. A brahmachari is a student and he just has to render service to Guru. A vanaprastha is retired. He can just maintain his body and life together, body and soul together by depending on different things, and then he has to develop his spiritual consciousness. A sannyasi just travels from one place to another place and enlightens people and then maintains himself with whatever comes of its own accord. But a grihastha has so many social obligations, family obligations. He has to raise children, he has to maintain wife, he has to take care of house, he has to take care of guests, and he has to maintain the people of other 3 ashramas. A grihastha gives charity to brahmacharis or vanaprasthas or sannyasis and maintains other people also. Thus grihastha's responsibilities are a lot, so Narada Muni describes them. And King Yudhishthira, who is also a grihastha, so he asked Narada Muni, please explain to me the duties of a grihastha. And householders must earn their livelihood, but they should offer whatever they earn to Krishna. So householders are not those people who just enjoy sense gratification with full license and with full eagerness. It's not like that. Householder also has so many rules and regulations. Grihastha life is also an ashram. Ashram is a place where spiritual culture is uplifted, is maintained, is observed with full diligence. So Grihastha life is also an ashram. Ashram means spiritual culture has to be uplifted. So a householder also has to align himself with spiritual culture. So he should honestly earn livelihood with his own personal hard work and utilize his earnings in serving God and serving other people while serving his family members. And a Grihastha should hear about Krishna. And Grihastha, although he is in the midst of so many material attachments, he should also cultivate detachment. That is the nature of Rajarshis. Although they take up a lot of responsibility of kingdom, they are also detached. So they do responsibility with detachment. In the name of responsibility, they do not become unnecessarily and unduly attached to material facilities. And in the name of detachment, they are not irresponsible also. While handling so many responsibilities, they maintain a spirit of detachment. A sannyasi is in the order of renunciation. A grihastha is in the spirit of renunciation. If a grihastha maintains the spirit of renunciation, the grihastha is also as good as a sannyasi in spirit. And ultimately, Krishna does not see or discriminate between people or devotees as grihasthas or brahmacharis or vanaprasthas or sannyasis. He sees their devotion. So one has to develop detachment and neutrality and frugality, simplicity, and one should be responsible to maintain one's resources nicely. One should avoid any greed. One should have equal vision and treat animals and birds and other living entities with an equal vision, because everything is manifested by the energy of the Lord. One should not hanker too much for dharmartha kamas. One should maintain other people also. A grihastha ideally is not supposed to take even his food also without feeding other people, dependent people. And one should be detached from certain comforts, and especially sense gratification with one's wife. One should procreate. One should indulge in sense enjoyment with one's wife only to procreate children ideally as a grihastha. And by deliberation, one must give up attachment to the partner. And one should be satisfied by eating prasada and with whatever comes of its own accord. One should worship everyone. One should perform sacrifices also as a grihastha. And one should also perform various religious duties and rules and regulations according to desha, kala and patra. According to time, place and circumstances, one has to perform different rituals. A grihastha is supposed to perform so many rituals. And a rich brahmana grihastha must offer oblations. Grihasthas are there amongst the brahmanas also, amongst the kshatriyas also, vaishyas also, shudras also. What we discussed earlier was varnas, now these are ashramas. And one should also understand how to perform different activities at different timings. Some timings are auspicious, some timings are inauspicious. One should perform auspicious activities at auspicious timings. So one should carefully avoid inauspicious muhurtas. But to perform devotional service, to chant the holy names of the Lord, to discuss the pastimes of the Lord, to remember the lotus feet of the Lord, means Ravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. They are not dependent on any auspicious or inauspicious timings or places or circumstances. At all times, at all places, in all circumstances, we can perform devotional service. So bhakti is beyond all this. As a grihastha, vanaprastha, brahmacharis or whatever, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, different varnas and ashramas have different duties. But ultimately, this entire varnashrama system is there to satisfy the Lord. Ataha pumbhirdvijasreshtha varnashrama vibhagashah svanushtitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. So all the varnas and ashramas, the rules and regulations that people follow in these varnas and ashramas are ultimately meant to please the Supreme Lord Hari. Samsiddhir Haritoshanam is the most important principle. Otherwise, Shrama eva hi kevalam. So all the just following the rules and regulations and rituals in a ritualistic way, in a official or formal way, just as a formality, it's not very much appreciated in the Vedic literatures. So Desha Kala Patra has to be considered, and one has to perform devotional service at holy places for spiritual advancement. Yatra yatra Harer Archa Sadeshaha Shreyasam Padam. Wherever Lord Hari is worshipped, that place becomes a holy place. That's the most auspicious place. And the time at which you are worshipping the Lord, that becomes the most auspicious time. The time at which you are remembering the Lord, that becomes the most auspicious time. So, yatra gangadayo nadyaha puraneshu cha vistrutaha. So the place where deity is worshipped is actually the most auspicious place, a temple. So one should discriminate between good places, times and circumstances, but one should also understand that on a spiritual plane, when the Supreme Lord is worshipped, everything is pure. So this beautiful shloka is there that says that Yah smaret pundarikaksham sabahya bhyantara suchihi. Means if you remember the lotus-eyed Supreme Lord Krishna, one's inside and outside is completely purified. Like that. So there is another shloka that says, Naham vipro nachanarapatir napi vaishyo nasudro naham varni nachagrahapatir novanastho yitirva kintu prodyan nikhila paramananda purnamrutabdher gopi bhartuh padakamalayur dasa dasa dasanudasaha. We are not Brahmanas, we are not Kshatriyas, we are not Vaishyas, we are not Shudras, we are not Brahmacharis or Vanaprasthas or Grihasthas or Sannyasis. We are servants of the servants of the servants of the Lord of Gopis, that is Krishna. That is our true identity. But in this world, the society is divided into four classes, and one's life is divided into four phases called four ashramas. One has to just follow the rules and regulations, but ultimately we need to understand that all these rules and regulations of ashramas and varnas are available only to bring us closer to Krishna. Just following the varnashrama dharma itself is not bhakti, but it can facilitate bhakti. So one has to understand that deeper point. This is ultimately the varnas and ashramas are external, but essential thing to do is devotional service. But still, varnashrama is the basic structure of the human society, structure of civilized society. So our human civilization begins by aligning ourselves with the rules and regulations prescribed according to different varnas and ashramas. So that's very important. But ultimately important thing is bhakti yoga. So one should worship Krishna. And why only Krishna? At the Rajasuya sacrifice, all the so many demigods and sages assembled there. The first puja, Agra puja, was given to Krishna. That's why Krishna needs to be worshipped. And there are so many other rules and regulations that a qualified Brahmana must be accepted as the best in the world. One has to accept such a person as Guru. But a Vaishnava is superior to Brahmana also. And even Krishna also worships that Brahmanas and devotees. So that completes the 14th chapter, ideal family life. And 15th chapter describes further instructions. So Narada Muni further describes the path of Grihasthas and finally summarizes everything. So Narada Muni says that there are gradations amongst the Brahmanas also. Some people are karmanishtas. Amongst the Brahmanas, who are the people who are karmanishtas, are devoted to performing rituals, are Grihasthas. And amongst the Brahmanas, some are taponishtas. They are dedicated to austerities. They are Vanaprasthas. And amongst the Brahmanas, there are Svadhyayanishtas. Means they are dedicated to studying scriptures. They are Brahmacharis. And some are Gnananishtas. They are fixed up in their knowledge. They are the sannyasis. So amongst the Brahmanas also, there are four categories, four ashramas. And whom to give charity? A person desiring liberation for oneself and one's ancestors should give charity to Gnananishta Brahmanas, means sannyasis. And also they can give charity may be given to other Brahmanas like Karmanishthas also sometimes if needed. And one should invite Brahmanas and feed the Brahmanas. This is another rule. And no need to invite so many people to make a show of one's prosperity. One should also respect time, place and respectability and ingredients, etc. And according to what one can afford, one can invite guests and feed them. One should offer prasad to the deity and then distribute that prasad. One should never offer meat or eggs or fish in a Shraddha ceremony. Shraddha ceremony is the rituals that a Grihastha offers for the ancestors. So one should also understand the rules and regulations of Shraddha ceremony. One should give up violence to people. One should give up killing animals. One should make simple offerings. And in this context, Narada Muni describes 5 kinds of dharmas. Vidharma, Paradharma, Abhasa Dharma, Upadharma and Chala Dharma. Vidharma is irreligion that obstructs one's execution of prescribed dharma. Paradharma is imitating someone else's duty. Then Abhasa Dharma is pretentious religion. And Upadharma is concocted religion. And Chala Dharma is cheating religion. So dharma is also of different types according to who is actually doing it. So in this context, Narada Muni describes the importance of self-satisfaction. So he says about satisfaction. Santushtasya nirihasya sarvatma ramasya yat sukham kutastat kamalobhena dhavatorthehaya dishaham. So one who is satisfied and desireless means one who does not have any material desires or desires which are beyond one's need or necessity. Such a person is sva atma ramasya, means he is self-satisfied. He is satisfied with whatever he has or he is. So kutastat kamalobhena, where is such happiness for lust and greedy person? So a person who is greedy and lusty can never be satisfied. But a satisfied person is not greedy. So satisfied people are the happiest people on the planet. Self-satisfied people are very happy, while people who are constantly desiring sense gratification, they are constantly in anxiety. So one should cultivate that satisfaction, and one should give up this insatiable greed. Especially householders should not be very greedy. Of course, all the people should not be greedy, but a householder earns money. It's authorized that a householder earns money, but one should not become so greedy for money. So dissatisfaction with what one has will ultimately lead one to fall down. And there are these negative qualities or personality traits that one is supposed to avoid by all means. So how to avoid? So verse number 22 to 29 describe the process of conquering anarthas. So he says, asankalpas jayet kamam. How to give up lust? By asankalpa, by not having so much of determination to fulfill that lust. Second, krodham kama vivarjanat. How to conquer anger? By giving up the objective of sense desire. Because when we have so much desire to attain an object, and if we don't get that object, we become angry. That is the nature of anger. So giving up desire will make us give up anger. Then greed, how to give up greed? By considering the problems of wealth. If I have so much of wealth, I will lose all my peace. So by understanding that, we will not be so greedy. And how to give up fear? By considering that suffering is due to karma. How to give up lamentation and illusion? By deliberation on the knowledge of matter and spirit. So if we actually understand what is matter and what is spirit, what is body and what is soul, then we will not have to lament. Generally, our lamentation and illusion are because of bodily conception. Because of identifying ourselves with this body, we lament or we become illusioned. That's the whole case of Arjuna in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. But in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna told Arjuna, give up this lamentation and illusion, understand the science of soul. The soul is eternal and the body is material and perishable at any moment. If we understand the science of soul, we will not lament or we will not be under illusion. And how should one give up pride? By serving great devotees. And one can give up all obstacles in yoga by practicing silence, or by speaking only if it is necessary, or speaking only spiritual subject matters. How to give up envy or violence? By giving up sense gratification. If we are too addicted to sense gratification, we naturally become violent towards other people, or we can become envious towards other people, because even at the cost of being violent or envious, we want to derive our sense gratification. But if we give up addiction to sense gratification, we can give up envy towards those people who are gratifying their senses better, or we will not become violent to those people to torment them to derive sense gratification for ourselves. Because when we are greedy for sense gratification, we don't even mind causing some trouble to other people, causing some violence to other people. For example, somebody is addicted to eating meat. So he will take to violence and kill an animal, kill an innocent goat or kill an innocent hen, chicken, and then eat. If he gives up that sense gratification for his tongue, he need not be violent towards those innocent animals. And one should give up sleep. Give up sleep means control sleep. Sleep is required for the body, but one should not overindulge in sleep. So by developing mode of goodness, one can avoid oversleeping. So like that, one can avoid passion and ignorance by increasing goodness. One can avoid even goodness also by becoming detached and maintaining and cultivating Shuddha Sattva Guna. So these are various qualities, and one can develop all these qualities under the guidance and in the association of a bona fide guru or acharya. A teacher can help us conquer all these anarthas and cultivate all good qualities. So next, our Narada Muni describes that one has to conquer mind, and in this way one should control the mind and make the mind peaceful, and in this way one can be liberated, a householder can be liberated. Now, one who accepts sannyasa by giving up his regular household duties and then again takes to sense gratification is called a vantasi. Vantasi means one who eats his own vomit. So one takes up sannyasa, a renounced order. A brahmachari can accept grahastha life after his training is over. But sannyasa ashram is the last ashram where one goes beyond vanaprastha also. So after accepting sannyas life, if one again takes to sense gratification, he is called a vantasi, or a person who eats his own vomit. So there are different abominable activities for different ashramas. A grahastha should not give up his prescribed duties. It is considered abominable for him. A brahmachari should not give up his vows. And a vanaprastha should not live in a village or align oneself to different social things. And a sannyasi should not be addicted to sense gratification. If he is addicted to sense gratification, it is considered abominable for a sannyasi. So like that, Narada Muni describes the rules and regulations of sannyasis and brahmacharis and vanaprasthas and grahasthas. And he also gives his body chariot analogy, where the horses are compared to senses, and the mind is compared to the reins of the horses, and the intelligence is compared to the driver of the chariot, and the person in the body is compared to the traveler in the chariot. So that body chariot analogy is also spoken, and he also describes the paths of pravritti and nivritti, and he gives a quick summary of all the occupational duties. And then finally Narada Muni concludes his description of varnashrama system. And at the end, Narada Muni also tells Yudhishthira Maharaj about his previous life as Upabarhana. Narada Muni, in his previous life, in the previous day of Brahma, he was a Gandharva named Upabarhana. And Upabarhana was very beautiful, very handsome, and he is very attractive to women specifically. And once there was a great Sankirtan festival conducted by great Prajapatis, progenitors of mankind. And in that sacrifice, Gandharva, this Upabarhana was also invited. So Upabarhana went there along with his girlfriends, so many female associates, and he started singing some materialistic songs. And the Prajapatis became upset. This is a Sankirtan festival, and this is a celebration where we have to worship the Supreme Lord, and you are behaving like a Shudra and singing some materialistic songs. You are behaving like a Shudra, we curse you to become a Shudra. When the Prajapatis cursed Narada Muni, means Upabarhana like this, Upabarhana became the son of a maid servant, Shudra. We have discussed in the first canto, 5th chapter, the previous history of Narada Muni. Upabarhana became that Shudra, the son of maid servant. But somehow by the association of Bhakti Vedantas, this son of maid servant has become qualified as a pure devotee, and in the next life he became Narada Muni. And the current Narada Muni is a pure devotee. So in this way, Narada Muni described his own previous life, and he also described the story of Prahlad Maharaj very beautifully, and he also described various aspects of Varnas and Ashramas. So he concluded his narration. So Sukadeva Goswami quoted this whole conversation between Yudhishthir and Narada Muni in front of Parikshit Maharaj. And Sukadeva Goswami concluded this whole conversation, and then 7th canto is completed. And in the next episode, we will begin the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the 7th canto, we have seen the glorious story of Prahlad Maharaj and a brief description of Varnashram system. So we will conclude here. Thank you all very much. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.